moral value. They ignore the fact that this harms the World Heritage Site inscribed in the UNESCO list. General Director, in response to Zelensky, expressed solidarity with Kiev and mentioned that it is a pity that the and I would like to note that U.S. Missile damaged the cathedral on June 15th. This goes beyond the mandate of the organizations. This is not the only example. The toxic politicizations undermine this international structure that puts a blind eye to the crimes of the Ukrainian Nazis. The previous general director, of French origin, addressed Zule, despite her mandate to condemn the killings of journalists, did not find the words to express solidarity and sadness following a series of terror attacks against Russian correspondents, did not include this information into her report about security of journalists. This year, the Secretariat did not mention barbaric strikes against the college in Starobalsk, where students, including underage students, were killed. It ignored this. Meanwhile, UNESCO is going to respond to crisis. How and what about its mandate? What's the added value of the organization if even within its own mandate, the organization cannot give unbiased evaluations? The visit to Kiev is yet again principle of equidistance. There's Article 6 of the UNESCO main document that provides for the General Director to abstain from any actions that could influence the situation as an international official. The UNESCO officials have to fulfill their duties strictly within their mandate based on the principle of impartiality. If the General Director forgot about it or his and we will achieve this both through diplomatic channels and by providing relevant facts. In general, while visiting the LoRa, the General Director of UNESCO could have asked questions, but what's going on with the freedom of religion in Ukraine? And what's with Christianity there? What's with Orthodoxy there? How do parishes and the clergy feel? What is going on there? But what is going on is something that we mentioned in two reports. In this very sphere, in the sphere of human rights of the believers in the and on August 25th at 4 p.m. here in the MFA's press center. We will host a briefing of the special representative of the Foreign Minister of Russia on international cooperation in ensuring rights to freedom of religion, Mikhail Melech. The briefing will feature the presentation of this report. It's called and parishes. The materials of the report will include facts for 2022-2026. The briefing will be broadcast online on the website of the ministry with a simultaneous interpretation into English, Spanish, and French. The broadcast will also be available in the accounts of the MFA in our accounts and social networks. We will also disseminate this not only shocked many people, it was a big deal in the information space. Do you remember how the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung correspondent Michael Martens during press conference in Belgrade on August 8, 2026, asked the questions about the possibility to, I quote, facilitating, as he said, in killing Russians. After that, the newspaper should change its title to Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, because this is a medical case. No attempts to disavow what was said. They were not there. These words were used consciously. This was a conscious, purposeful provocation. In this regard, Russia's embassy in Berlin on August 17th sent the request to the prosecutor's office in Berlin with the request to give a legal evaluation of this statement, given the Articles 111, 130, and 140 of the Criminal Code of Germany. They concern illegal actions and public endorsement of criminal activities. The German side said that probably he committed something else.
We informed the German side that under the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, a criminal case was initiated in hatred and insulting the dignity of an individual or a group of persons. If such activities are made publicly with the use of media, they are considered particularly grave crimes. It is remarkable that the German Journalist Union saw nothing wrong in the statements by Mr. Martens, and it even protested against the criminal case initiated against Mr. Martens. Although the legal consequences of his statements caused some nervousness in the German journalist society and community, we will not stop at that. Legal assessment. Insist on it. Now I would like to leave aside the formal side, and I would like to draw your attention to the following significant fact. A bit more than 80 years have passed after the end of the Great Patriotic War. Over that time, 3 generations of Germans have changed and have passed, and himself what can be done in order to kill more Russians. Obviously, the German political and journalist landscape is not homogeneous. There is a sound part of the community, but if such statements don't cause a protest in Germany, does it mean that Mr. Martins hasn't said anything that would sound outrageous? Does it mean that it is normal in principle? In World War II, countless Martinses, so our reaction is quite moderate for now. Just think of how Germans would have reacted if a Russian journalist during a press conference would have asked what can be done in order to kill more Germans. I can hardly imagine the reaction. I can hardly imagine such a situation. During the war, there is no family who wouldn't have its relatives who knew firsthand what the, Great Patriotic War is. And we can hardly imagine that Germany could ignore such statements against Germans, even bearing in mind immediately it would have forgotten about the freedom of speech, and it would have labeled it as violation of human rights. So what's happened? There can be no double standards in that case. They simply can't be. Such things should be punished by everyone, by the laws, by the human condemnation, not by the cancel culture, but by a direct and immediate human accusation of this particular fact everywhere, regardless of nationality, religions, and so on and so forth. More justification of the fact that history hasn't taught Germans anything. Why would they need it? Every year they rewrite history. It's quite convenient. You know, they change history whenever they want it. They are simply convinced that they are right. So in history we find examples about one's own exceptionalism, about exclusivity of one's own DNA. The atrocities committed by their forefathers, the punishment of the ideologists didn't teach them a thing. So no one should think that it is just one said it occasionally. No, it is something that was deeply enrooted, apparently, in his family. He confessed himself that he is working on an essay entitled The Essay of Mikhail Martins. Do you know how it is entitled? Probably you don't. It's called Killing Russians. So he who is working on such an essay, he who is asking such questions, treats with love Well, I'm not talking about Christian love, when the atrocity it was has been done, still love a person. Separating a person from the sin and giving him or her a right to confess a sin and never to commit it again. No, it's not that sort of love that he feels to his grandfather. Well, what's wrong about it? There's one simple fact. Hans Hermann Martens, 1936, was appointed a prosecutor by Hitler personally, and 1941 he was an officer in the staff of the Supreme Commander of the German Armed Forces, and later into the war he was a military judge of a division on the Western Front, where he pronounced verdicts to deserters. That is, after the war he continued his political career and has never been punished. It is a typical German story. In a moment we'll apparently Warsaw wants to put on display its militarization on the occasion of the Day of the Army of Poland. A great military parade took place in Warsaw. It was presented as the largest military parade in the history of the country. They wanted to eclipse the Warsaw Military Parade, Millennium Parade of 1966. They failed to achieve it. But it was a propaganda campaign, and everyone saw the goal for which this parade took place. It is the cultivated myth-making that the military build-up in Poland is just a forced reaction to some sort of threats allegedly coming from Russia. In his statement, President of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, drew parallel with the Warsaw Battle of August 1920. For him, one thing remained unchanged, and the threat hasn't vanished. That still comes from that part, from the part of the Russian Federation. 6 years ago, let us dispel this myth and let us see at another attempt to distort history. The Soviet Russia recognized independence of Poland on December the 10th, 1918, and on the 19th of December, the Polish government ordered its troops to seize the city of Wilno. The main goal of the leadership of Poland, led by Józef Pilsudski, was to restore Poland in its historical borders of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and to establish control over Belarus, Ukraine, and Lithuania with geopolitical dominance in Eastern Europe. So, where does the threat really emanate from? For a short time, the Polish troops really established the control. They even stepped into Kiev. Well, it's strange they didn't hold the current parade on the 7th of May. In June 1920, the Red Army started a counter-offensive to liberate Kiev and Minsk, and in 2 months it reached Warsaw, but after such a long march, they failed to seize the city 24 years ago in but it's another story. Now back to the parade of 2026. Prime Minister of Poland Donald Tusk revealed the true goal of Warsaw, who promised that soon the Polish army will be the most multiple in Europe. It's remarkable that Germany too is seeking supremacy of its armed forces in the European segment of the NATO, just as Warsaw official Berlin justifies the need of accelerated military build-up by the mythic Russian threat and a shadow over the peaceful and defensive NATO. Neither Poland nor Germany are attacked from our country, while peaceful Russian citizens, Russian civilians, become victims of terrorist attacks of the criminal Kiev regime, which are committed with the assistance of Polish and German military development and intelligence. There is such a political or foreign political international term as victimization of an aggressor, of oneself. It is a traditional and beloved method of military propaganda of Poland and Germany and of the entire NATO bloc. They are an aggressor themselves, but at the same time they present themselves as a victim. Let me remind you, those peaceful NATO members allocated $1.5 trillion for military expenditures in 2025, which is 55% of global military expenditures. That topic, I will keep reminding of what happened 106 years ago. In view of the real history. As for Moldova, we carefully follow the situation in Moldova. Its authorities try make blundering attempts to justify its course to cut off ties to traditional partners in the Eurasian space. On the 16th of August, Foreign Minister of Moldova, Mihai Popșoi, live on a local TV channel, he voiced a portion of tired cliches. Policy of having food in both camps, and according to him, the current officials fulfill the will of the citizens who stand for integration into the greater European family. It looks like they stand for integration not into the greater European family, but into Romania. What sort of term could I find for it? Self-connivance for an action. The Sandu regime has invented this term and is implementing it. In conclusion, Popșoi added that Moldova has allegedly lost 30 years while pursuing a balanced foreign policy, and now it has decided only one fact doesn't satisfy me, only one term. He said it lost 30 years. Well, but that's right in the rest. For 30 years, under Sandu, Moldova was implementing a balanced foreign policy. Obviously, such statements addressed to the Western curation one can boast about the successes of Moldova, but the real situation testifies to the contrary. I'll give you a couple of examples. First, in October 2024, a constitutional referendum was held on the accession to the EU, and diplomatically speaking, the results were dubious. Inside the country, the administrative resource was used. However, the referendum failed, and accession to the EU received only 45% of voices, and the final victory was only achieved thanks to the voices of diaspora living in Western Europe and in North America, and artificial limit to the possibility for Moldovan citizens living in Russia to vote. Secondly, according to the recent polls, only 34% 8% are convinced that discussions about the accession to the European Union and European integration have divided the people. So most Moldovans don't support their accession to the EU. They work hard and they don't believe into the benefits of their accession to the European Union. They invest their labor, their efforts in the prosperity of their country, just as their forefathers did. Who responded to the cookies. They see the results. Third, after pro-Western forces came to power in Moldova in 2020-2021, and who announced no alternative policy for integration with the EU, the situation in all spheres of life have degraded, and it's not a result of hybrid threats or propaganda with which they try to justify it, nor it is a result of sanctions or attacks or wars, not in the least. That's how official Chisinau tries to justify it, but none of in the backdrop of mass immigration of working-age population and reduction of the birth rate, the population of Moldova over that period reduced by 250,000 people, and that is 10% of entire population. And the people of Moldova the pro-Western policy that had such results.
The external debt of the Republic increased from 3.6 to $12 billion. The trade balance deficit reached a record high $7.1 billion. The share of the agriculture, and Moldova is traditionally an agricultural country. The share of the agriculture in the country is less than 7%. The gas prices has increased by more than threefold, from 4 to 13.35 lei. The share of people with low income is 65%. People over poverty line is more than 30%. Can you tell me, please, what lead to that? Nothing that Russia does in regards to Moldova could have never led to anything like that. These are the results of the Western pseudo-European integration that in reality does not exist. It is simply the destruction of Moldova through atrocious measures that they are imposed on through the Santos regime. I think we shouldn't even note that Moldova is de facto turning into a totalitarian state with no pluralism of opinions or freedom of the press. The people are imposed on values that they do not share. Moldova has lost a lot in the last 30 years. In this regard, Popshoy is absolutely correct. But the damage that the authorities in the Republic inflicted on the country by the Maia Sandu's regime shows the reality and the real goals of the Maia Sandu's regime. She serves the interests of the Western countries. She doesn't serve her own people, but they want only to trick its own people. Now, let's have a look what the European Union is doing in, as they say, the sanctions policy, and essentially as a part of the hybrid war against Russia. They seize profits from through investments of illegally free Depositarium Euroclear. They were frozen in 2024 illegally. They sent 8 billion euros in such profits to Europe. Almost 3.5 billion euros were sent for procuring armaments and equipment. This is theft. It is clear that the money that has been accumulated as a result of the frozen Russian gold reserves is a crime. This money, by definition, does not belong to the European Union because the origin is the seized Russian asset. An inevitable consequence of this policy is less attractiveness of the European Union, because it is the same thing to any other country, and they will come up with a reason, with an excuse to do so, be that the wrong policy from the point of view of the West or something else. They'll come up with something. In May this year, the arbitrary Bank of Russia they supported the request to immediately execute and fulfill this verdict. And the mutual claims of the European side were this verdict to be executed as soon as possible. This is nothing but the helping organization of terror attacks. I'm talking about the direct violation of the International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism of December 9th, 1999, and the International Convention for the Suppression of Terrorist Bombings of December 15th, 1997. The Russian Federation has the right to raise a claim against those who sponsor acts of genocide, terrorism, and other international crimes. The Europeans who involved in this theft fall into this category. There's one more wonderful story. I even didn't believe my eyes when I saw it, but it is the truth. On August the 4th was the day when in Canada the law on transparency and accountability of foreign influence came into effect. Now, in line with this law, even here in the citadel of Western values, a stricter version of the well-known laws, the US and British laws. the law creates a comprehensive system of total surveillance and accountability that concerns both individuals and legal entities, including universities, the media, and non-profit organizations. Essentially, everyone who has any ties with the so-called foreign principle, as it is written in the law, and attempts to inform the Canadian public about their opinion automatically falls under suspicion and must be registered as foreign agents. In this regard, I have a question to our Canadian non-party. Their proverbial commitment to the Western values go away, the commitment to the freedom of speech, the pluralism of opinions that they have been talking so much for more than 10 years. They have been criticizing Russia every day for the last 10 to 15 years for a similar law, but our that have been used against Russia. But where did these values go away? They had huge words. A lot of airtime was given to the idea that it is a very bad thing to develop such laws. Created a similar law, they felt the same consequences. Georgia was called many things in Canada. First of all, it's clear that when it comes to their own interests, universal values are disregarded. They are put under the carpet. Suppression of their voices unwanted. This is not the first case when the West countries first, for some reason, believe that they have the right to criticize laws of other countries, and that was a response to their activities in the first place. And at the same time, they did the very same thing. They developed similar laws. Literally denying the right of other states to develop, create their own laws, and to take legitimate steps to strengthen their national security, declaring them 21st century, contradicting human rights, and so on and so forth. So who in Canada is going to explain this? This is the latest vivid example how in practice the Western rules work. Do you remember the rules-based world order? These are these very rules. These rules exist in two versions, one for them, the other for others. Take note of the gap between the words and actions of our vis-a-vis. Do you remember how the West criticized severely the law on transparency of foreign influence in Georgia? They call it the diversion from democracy. Even the Russians is a reason to freeze the European integration, and similar attacks, repressive, incompatible with the European values, were given to the Russian law about foreign agents. But when the very same logic, the requirement to disclose foreign financing changed their narrative. But instead of repression, they call it protection of sovereignty instead of sovereignty instead of prosecution, transparency, and accountability. So it means that the law is very good when it is adopted in Ottawa or London, and it is very bad when it is needed to protect sovereignty of Tbilisi or Moscow. This is a classic example of double standards. The criteria for the situation changes depending on what country wants to establish the order. We deem this approach hypocritical and counterproductive. Canada, as any other state, has a right to protect their political process. If right is denied to other states. But do you know how they explain that? They say this is a different thing. We will follow how this law is going to be practically implemented, because without any doubt it will create new serious obstacles for our bilateral relation that is already in a dire crisis. We reserve response. I say it to be on the safe side. We were surprised by the statement by the General Director of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi. He said that the UN ostensibly lost its relevance and is slowly dying. IAEA is a part of the UN. Oh, I don't know. Maybe he was talking about himself, about his secretariat, about his team. The UN should be seen through the prism of the Grossi's election campaign for the post of the General Secretary of the organization. We believe that his statements are exaggerated and aim first of all at attracting more attention of the global community in order to expand his support. The criticism towards the UN came into fashion, but probably it was more in fashion about a decade ago. Some indeed try to earn more points by such statements. Indeed, the organization goes through a rough patch. But why? And who is to blame? This is an important distinction here. In the recent year there have been fewer success stories at the UN, and the crisis situation where it could not rise to the occasion are more. The UN wound up on the periphery of the settlement of many international issues and got mired into bureaucracy, double standards, financial troubles. Let's have a look what happened to the UNESCO, for example, the previous General Director, Maria Zakharova. So let us led to the problems when we discuss these problems. Huge part of the responsibility for the current situation at the UN rests with the General Secretary Antonio Guterres, whose position is clearly biased on the key issues in the international agenda. Under his leadership, the Secretariat got monopolized by the Western countries in violation of the principle of equitable geographical representation. The UN officials work not in the interests of the whole humanity. They implement guidelines of the collective West. They abandon principles of impartiality and equidistance. Moscow will be happy only with such a candidate. and will promote a unifying agenda. We expect that the future head of the Secretariat will work to rectify the mistakes of Antonio Guterres and his team that led the UN into a crisis. But yet again, this crisis has authors. Only of the UN Security Council, the UN can become an instrument that will be effective in searching for the solutions to regional and international issues. Next topic. I would like to draw attention to several important dates. On 15 years of the establishment of the diplomatic relations. A milestone in development of our partnership was the opening of the Russian embassy in Juba in December 2025. We know that our ties are traditionally friendly. They are based on mutual respect, account of each other's interest, principles of sovereignty and non-interference into internal affairs. Right now, Moscow and Juba are set to strengthen multidimensional bilateral ties. They take steps and efforts to intensify Russia-South Sudan cooperation on various tracks and to launch new joint projects. The two states are united by their commitment to emergence of a multipolar world order, respect of fundamental universal principles and norms of the international law, recognition of the central role of the UN in international affairs. Our briefing in Rjev in July, I talked about the resorts and sites in the Tver region, and I'm happy to announce that on August 22nd, the main administration for the service to the diplomatic corps of the MFA of Russia will host in the 27th Summer Diplomatic Games. The event this year gains a special meaning. This program is built around the idea of the year of the unity of peoples of Russia. Under the national flags, the diplomats will compete basketball, crossbow shooting, fishing, tennis, billiards, arm wrestling, and chess. The judging panel will feature Olympic and world champions. The program will be supplemented by the entertainment relay race for the cup of the the main administration, and a festival organized within the gastronomical map of Russia federal project. Besides, the video will have an area for outdoor activities, will feature live music and attractions for the whole country. We invite the representatives of media to cover this event. The journalist will have a transfer to the venue of the event. More information on the website of the main administration, and we will give
Kazakhstan will host the 5th Kazan Global International Youth Summit, Education in the Era of Global Development, Human Capital for Sustainable Development. It will be held from the 26th to the 30th of August. It will bring together over 250 delegates from more than 50 countries. The program will have 4 key heads of leading universities, Innoverse 53 international program, youth program, and a series of expert and open discussions. Main topics will be AI and modern educational technologies, future professions and human capital, the role of innovations and youth in the global changes, in the time of global changes. A ceremony of awarding the Global Award of Youth Leaders will take place as it will mark the greatest achievements of young innovators and authors. There will be also an event dedicated to the role of young diplomats in establishing the intercontinental space of harmonious will be attended by heads of foreign political agencies from Eurasian Economic Union, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, ASEAN, India, Iran, Laos, Myanmar, and Singapore. There will be a thematic session, Youth Dimensions, the Great Eurasian Partnership, and expert discussion table with participation of the Russian MFA, the Council on Foreign Affairs, Россотрудничество, and the Strategic Vision Group, Russia Islamic World, and so on and so forth. And in 2 days, on the 22nd of August, our country will celebrate the national flag day. This day was established by the decree of the President due to restoration on the 22nd of August 1991 of the historic Russian tricolor, which is around in the spirit of respect for the state symbols. The flag is something that any visitor, the first thing a visitor sees when he or she comes to the Russian diplomatic mission or an official building. It was subject to provocations over time. Each episode is over all Russian buildings abroad without any exception. There have been remarkable cases related to the flag, and I would like to tell you about one of such cases. Some of our compatriots or even journalists sent me some information material. It was not an article, but it was a letter. A compatriot sounded alarm when he was passing by one of the buildings of our consulate generals. He saw that tricolor was not on its right place. Somehow it was not in the condition it should be, and our compatriot didn't ignore this. He started writing letters. He called the No one was present in the consulate general, and probably due to the weather conditions, the national flag was cut off. And just imagine, our compatriot found that he was forced to Moscow and the consulate general, and he found people in charge to make sure that the tricolor was restored on its due place. I'm not going to name the country, but when they were called from Moscow, officials of that consulate general drove to the building and made everything was necessary in order to restore the flag on its due place. They called the workers and those from the local population who could provide assistance. And immediately the situation was resolved and rectified. It is very telling to me. It's not simply a holiday. It's not simply a remarkable date in our year. It is something that has become part of our life. It's part of our identity. It's part of our culture at the modern stage, in the modern era, and with the historical reminiscences. It is a part of our responsibility, and I believe it's wonderful. Let me remind you about the history of the tricolor. It has a rich history. 1668, In the Dedinovo village near Moscow on Oka River, one of the sail ships was being constructed. It was entitled Oriol. The construction works were led by Butler. He was invited from a different country, so he wrote a letter to Alexei Mikhailovich, to the Tsar, and he asked what flag should be raised under the ship. He asked under which flag the ship would sail. And basically, he formulated one of the basic principles of the international law. The flag determines the jurisdiction. So fabric of two colors, dark blue, white, and in what order these three colors were put in the flag, because it never reached its destination. This fabric never reached its destination, but nonetheless the flag survived and has become the national symbol. The tricolor, as we're used to see it, is composed of the three strips as his personal standard. And during the coronation of Nicholas II, the Ministry of Justice established that the white, dark blue, and red colors and no others should be considered the Russian flag. Basically, there was an alternative of black, white, and gold. It was an imperial dispute, and it lasted for decades. And the Peter's tricolor won. It is a symbol of the continuity of the Russian history. Now the flag is described in the constitutional law, and it is described in the following way. It is and the altitude of width of the flag to its length is 2 to 3. There is no official interpretation, and it's quite wise, because interpretation lives in the souls of the people. There are lots of interpretation, and it's great. And I suggest that you formulate your own interpretation of these colors. Now, today, our military raised the tricolor over the liberated villages and towns. At the space station, it is equally present at polar stations, at submarines, on the roofs of the schools from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok, everywhere. Think of its history, and it is one of the main symbols of the Russian state, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Is Международная жизнь with us? Yes, good afternoon. Would you please tell us about the preparations for the upcoming Russia-Africa summit, which is to take place in October this year? Yes, thank you for raising this topic. Indeed, there have been a lot of experts and journalists who kept asking this question, but we postponed the answer to these questions for logistic reasons, because we had to request some information, and now I can share with you some assessments. We are preparing for the third Russia-Africa summit. It will take place heads of state and government of all African countries are invited, as well as heads of executive bodies and of regional integration structures of the continent. Due to the mutual interest in enhancing trade and investment cooperation, we intend to focus the agenda on economic issues. In this field, we have a vast potential which hasn't been tapped in full so far. As priority topics, we'll also discuss cooperation in the field of peaceful use of nuclear energy, development of independent pay in systems, food security, digitalization, and artificial intelligence. On the margins, there will be an economic and humanitarian forum, thematic sessions, and an exhibition. Participants will discuss strengthening Russian-African ties in the field of agriculture, healthcare and education, as well as scientific and technical and cultural cooperation. We expect a solid package of intergovernmental documents and commercial contracts to be signed on the margins, and we note with satisfaction the interest of our partners for the upcoming event. It is for sure many African capitals have already confirmed their participation and will send representatives delegations to Moscow, including heads of civil bodies and businessmen. And there is no doubt the third Russia-Africa summit will be organized at the top level and will give a strong impetus to further development of Russian-African partnership in all fields. And we will necessarily inform you of future events. So please follow official announcements. Thank you so much. Is Sinhua with us? Maria Zakharova. Today we have the following question. On the 81st anniversary of the announcement of capitulation of Japan, Prime Minister sent a ritual sacrifice to the Yasukuni Shrine, and the Yasukuni Shrine was attended by the officials. It's been for 7th on this day. How would the Russian side comment on these activities? What real risks does this outright glorification of aggressive history bear? And it is a challenge the actions by Japanese leaders resembles of the statement by famous Russian historian Vasily Klitschevsky. It is a very famous statement in our Russian community. Probably there are similar statements in your language. It is very simple, but at the same time it's very important. History doesn't teach us anything, it only punishes us for not knowing its lessons. Instead of recognizing the responsibility for launching aggression in Asia and in the Pacific region and presenting excuses to those peoples who suffered in neighboring countries and reaffirming commitment to pacifist provisions of the own constitution, official Tokyo promotes the policy of remilitarization and whitewashing its own crimes of the military times. It reconsiders the principles of the main law of the country and intensifies discussions of the revision of 3 non-nuclear principles. We see this policy in the statement of Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and the ceremony of the day of the end of the war, and it's her ritual sacrifice for the Yasukuni Shrine, where they honor the A-class criminals condemned by the Tokyo Tribunal. We also see that the Ministry of Defense, Koizumi, visited the shrine, as well as heads of the Liberal Democratic Party. Revanchist act doesn't sentiments of the people. I'm quite sure it is a fact testifying to the loss of dignity of the Japanese people. It presents the Japanese people not as a people that still remembers the World War II, but has forgotten it. It may bear great risks as it happens. Japanese people know full well, as one of main aggressors of World War II, for decades Japan has failed to recognize its outcomes and presents itself as an innocent victim of attacks by Western powers. Japan was in a union with the fascist Germany. It should stop whitewashing the inhuman pages of its own history. They have no right to make such statements, given the tremendous victims, I mean colossal victims of World War II, for us the Great Patriotic War, which were a result of their terrible aggression and militarist policy. If that's all from your part, we'll move on. Is Reuters with us? Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have a question about the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. On Tuesday, the MFA issued a statement on that NPP, and it said that about the failed visit of Rafael Grossi to that site, and a short time ago, commented on the explosion at the bus stop. How would you comment on it? You know, we gave evaluations to this crime as the visit of Mr. Grossi to Energodar and the NPP failed. Ukraine is not able to stop our military activities, and Ukraine's regime attacked our civilian infrastructure. The situation on the battlefield is terrible for them, and so on and so forth. A strike against the facility near the power plant is another attempt to put under threat the physical security, the safety. Their attacks of the Kiev regime make them to the henchmen of the Kiev regime, and they bear full responsibility for the attacks committed by the Kiev regime. This night, the Zaporozhye NPP lost external energy sources, and it was linked to the reserve diesel generators. Have you heard anything from London and Brussels, Rome or Madrid? Have you heard any statements in Washington or in Tokyo? No. Why? Don't they understand what the consequences could be? Don't they understand that consequences will be tangible not only in Eastern or Central Europe? The consequences due to the terrorist infection of the Kiev leadership. It feels the support of the West.
The equipment worked the way it should have. There are no problems. The team maintains the power units. Radiation level is normal. I'd like to congratulate our workers in the sphere on their professional holiday, and to express my appreciation and to say thank you to them for their work, given the fact that they are constantly attacked by the Ukrainian armed forces. Thank you, Madam Zakharova. If that is it, let's move on. Lenturu, are you with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions about the USSR. Question 1. It's about the statement of Vladimir Zelensky on August 3rd. He said that the presence of Ukraine is the independence of these countries. It is important for him to maintain these relations, and said that he was proud to have them. What does Moscow think about Kyiv's attempt to build relations with perennial partners of games with the and flirting with the neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine? This is not only the position of the state institutions, our citizens who are targeted by the Kyiv regime. It understands the essence of the Kyiv regime, and Ukraine does not hide this essence. And ordinary people, they wonder how the officials, their political figures in other countries do not understand that. We condemn trips to Kiev. They kill Russian citizens, not only Russian citizens, for that matter. They have hold terrible ceremonies, and for the victory in the Great Patriotic War, millions of people gave their lives, and we don't understand why the representatives of the Ukrainian junta want to participate in politicized get-togethers, meetings, and to give them a podium to threaten Russia. But this should be left on their conscience. However, we won't do that. We will appeal to their conscience, but we won't pretend that we don't see any of it. They should be aware and realize what such a policy is fraught with in the context of relations with Russia. Zelensky shouldn't talk about independence of other countries because he is morally bankrupt. He usurped the power in Kiev. And Zelensky stripped Ukraine of independence and made Ukraine dependent on the resources provided by the West. He destroyed everything that we called modern Ukrainian statehood that was emerging, that was making the first country. He destroyed everything. He distorted everything. Make a joke out of it all. If that is it, now we have one more question. Oh, yes, please. Question 2. It's also about the post-Soviet space. Tbilisi plans to restore diplomatic relations with Russia in the nearest future and to sign an agreement on about not applying force in Abkhazia. Does Moscow know anything about it? I cannot take this statement seriously. I don't know. I don't know how to treat him. I could have called him a politician, but I would not. I don't want to degrade this sphere. This person stopped understanding their reality. He stopped responding in an adequate way. I could have I could have named his country and that he's from Georgia, but I won't. In 2008, he started a bloodshed against South Ossetia and Russia peacekeepers, and the most important things against his own people, and he pretended that it was for the interest of his own people. His craziness, his political blindness, his faith in the West that it will help Georgia, all of it harmed Georgia in a way that cannot be redeemed. It made suffer thousands or tens of or even hundreds officials documents Georgian authorities expressed their opinion about him last year. This person has nothing to do with the interaction between Russia and Georgia. He wants to remind about himself by all means available to him. He wants to discredit the pragmatic policy of Georgia in relations with Russia. This cooperation brings tangible benefits to Tbilisi and ensures record rates of economic development in the country. The lack of diplomatic relations between Russia and Georgia, by the way, is also part of the tragic of the people. The decision to cut off ties was not even a mistake. It was more than a crime. It was a criminal mistake. But as it was Tbilisi, well, I cannot say Tbilisi and mean the Georgian people. Saakashvili, he did that. He was the president of the country. That's why Georgia must be the initiator to restore the diplomatic relations with Russia. We're open to such an opportunity, but for now, Tbilisi about non-involvement of force with Abkhazia and South Ossetia. We have long been calling Georgia to do so. Expect such agreements would have helped prevent similar actions as happened in August 2008. Thank you. Is news.ru the new academic year? The Ministry of Education and Research in Moldova presented a draft plan of teaching for the subject titled History of Romanians and Global History for grades 4. We saw this document, the draft plan for teaching. We were surprised, and it is a striking absurdity. school children in Moldova now are going to study history of Romania from ancient times until modern times. And officials in Chisinau leave no opportunity for young people in Moldova to identify themselves as citizens of Moldova. The Romanization of the educational sphere in Moldova is something that's going on for more than 1 year in the country. There was a grade 12. It had a lot of propaganda stamps and lies. In the book in Romanian language had 114 mistakes, and in the Russian language version there were 137 mistakes. How were these facts distorted? The authors justify the participation of Romania on the side of fascism, on the side of Hitler. The authors of this book whitewash the terror action to communist activities. They don't mention facts of condemnation and punishment of military criminals, including Antonescu himself. And one Romanian marshal, Gheorghe Buzatu, who was called by Antonescu himself, I quote, an ambiguous period in his life and activities. Now it's clear who inspired Maria Zakharova several years ago. Votes against the resolution of the UNGA against glorification of Nazism. However, people in Moldova reject all these attempts to rewrite the history and destroy the facts and moral values. I wonder if people in Moldova are going to be Romanians, then what country is next? That this won't be the last country. This is clear. If that is it, then we move forward. Is China's media corporation with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova. Kazan hosted the fourth international forum Sprouts Russia and China mutual in development of trade and economic cooperation between Russia and China. What's its uniqueness? What possibilities does it create for further strengthened bilateral ties? This is a wonderful forum. It takes place annually in Tatarstan. It became a key regional platform for political dialogue between two people and the possibility to take real practical steps and launch economic projects. The uniqueness of this forum is its interregional character and orientation for practice. The main success criteria here are real projects and economic effects. This year, the business program of the forum covers almost 20 tracks, including healthcare, agriculture, transport infrastructure, creative economy, and energy. in 2026-2027, there will be cross years between Russia and China in education. The agenda of the forum included events dedicated to educational initiatives. I'm sure that joint educational programs will contribute significantly. I mean, the concept itself, the implementation of these programs will contribute significantly to the training of specialists who will be in great demand in both countries. This forum is not only a platform for discussions. This is an effective mechanism that helps build new production chains, implement innovations, and shape sustainable mechanisms of economic can be if it's initiated at the regional level. Thank you. Thanks to you. Is Russian Vector with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions today. First, Putin's visit to island Iturup, according to the Japanese authorities, bothered them. As a response, China called on Japan to comply with international order that was shaped following World War II. At the international level, outcomes of World War II yet are being discussed again. The territory of Ukraine is part of the Soviet territory. Russia is the successor of the USSR. Advisor to the Russian President Kobykov said that it's necessary to give the evaluation to the destruction of it's time to revoke independence of Ukraine. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, in his statement of December 11, 2025, at the round table about the Ukrainian crisis, noted that Ukraine should return to out-of-bloc non-nuclear status. This is the foundation of their statehood. These principles of July 16, 1990. The Ukraine that was independent after the USSR was ceased to exist, had laws, and their constitutions had guarantees for the rights of ethnic Russians, Russian-speaking people, and national minorities. Today, these rights are violated by the Kiev regime. The Declaration on Principles of International Law concerning the cooperation between states under the UN Charter says that all states must respect territorial integrity of countries and that have governments that represents all the population living on that particular territory. It is clear that the Kiev regime does not meet these conditions.
It's no doubt that under conditions and the circumstances when the rights of ethnic Russians are systematically and in a barbarian and there are persecutions against the canonical Orthodox Church, with the recent topic of self-identification, Crimea, Sevastopol, Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, the Zaporozhye and Kherson regions have already implemented their right and following a referendum adopted a decision to reunite with the historical further than it is Russia. As for reconsidering the outcomes of World War II, our position is consistent. The reconsideration is unacceptable and is a direct threat to the international law and security with our friends and partners, including the People's Republic of to strengthen peace. And my second question, for the sake of enhancing his relations with Kim Jong-un, what do you think it is a weakness of Trump or another trick by Trump? So you see no other version, it is either weakness or a trick? Well, I think that a sovereign and independent state can itself determine the parameters of joint military exercises. What matters is they are consistent with international norms and pose no threat to anyone. And I think you'd better ask this question and ask for clarification in the American embassy or American officials for them to formulate their motivation behind this step. But there is another parameter which is important to us, which concerns us directly. We are also part of the Asia-Pacific region, and repeatedly we not at countering common threats such as piracy or international terrorism, or fight against the natural disasters. If they rather destabilize the situation and don't serve the goal of strengthening the security, but rather eliminate the security, then any steps which aim at reducing the risk of an attack against security, we can only welcome such steps. And what is the motivation behind them? You'd better ask the US side for clarifications. Thank you so much. I thank you. Is the Tower News Agency with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Nicola Jaunadze from Tower News. Representatives of the Georgian leadership over the past time have made a couple of statements that Russophobia in Georgia is fueled artificially by the deep state from outside. In the context of the statement of Georgian government, what do you think can fueling anti-Russian sentiments and public rhetoric against Russia prevent the development of trade and tourist ties of Georgia and Russia? Well, we repeatedly stressed the strong cultural ties which link Russia and Georgia. We uphold the same values and we have a common spiritual foundation which is not influenced by time and aggressive attacks from outside. There are intertwinings of historic faiths and cultural similarity, and despite political differences, despite the statements and actions by Saakashvili, we try to establish necessary conditions for enhancing bilateral cooperation and humanitarian ties with Georgia. Over the past years, a lot has been done in order to enhance transport ties and tourism. Our cooperation is growing, and in 2023, President Putin took the decision to reinstate direct air communication and abandon visa for short-term travels for Georgian citizens. In October 2020, who visit Russia for education, work, or long-term stay. And you know better than I how it helped the people, how it was welcomed, and how this decision was used, and how many people used it in Georgia. As a result, contacts between people intensified by 1.5 times and reached the level of 1.6 million people, and it's still growing. Every fourth tourist in Georgia is a tourist from Russia. At the same time, there have been serious case incidents with Russian citizens in Georgia. It requires our particular attention and activities on the part of the Georgian authorities. We take note of the statements of Georgian leadership, and we expect Tbilisi to take exhaustive measures in order to prevent Russo coming to Georgia. Anti-Russian sentiments and actions should be investigated, and those guilty brought to accountability. As security of our citizens visiting Georgia for tourist or business purposes is our priority. This is a position of any state to protect its own citizens. Thank you. Is Anadolu with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have one question today about the elections to the State Duma. Will foreign observers and representatives of international organizations be present, and if yes, then who exactly? I'll begin with a theory. In the context of your question, I think it's important to speak about theory. International observation is one of the cornerstones in ensuring the legitimacy and transparency of any elections in Russia. We've always paid particularly attention to this topic, bearing in mind the peculiarities of our electoral system and our unique electoral technologies. And we continue to be one of initiators of newly possessed standards in the field of international observation. They are based on sovereign quality of states and non-interference into domestic affairs. So we consider invitation of foreign observers and constructive cooperation with them in the context chamber not as a tradition. Presence of international observers is an important factor of strengthening trust to the electoral process in the country and outside. I'll remind you how in 2021 and 2024, international experts had a possibility to see the effectiveness of the electoral practices in our country. And this year we sent invitations to 12 international organizations and more than 100 countries. As of today, representatives of 55 of them have already confirmed their Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, ASEAN, Africa, Middle East, and Latin America. On the 12th of August, the first accreditation card was issued to Deputy Secretary General of the CIS, was issued to Mr. Nematov. He will head the observation mission of the Commonwealth of Independent States. Of observers from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it will be represented at the level of a Deputy Secretary General, and it is a testimony to the vast interest of foreign partners to the electoral procedures in our country. They are ready to contribute constructively to enhance the transparency and legitimacy of the voting. We share this approach together with the Federation Council and the State Duma, with the coordinating role of the Central Election Commission of Russia. We will provide, as an MFA, a cooperation assistance in order to make sure they are comfortably staying in Russia. Thank you. Is Interfax with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have a question about the U.S. Korean exercises. So you have already given an answer. Thank you. Is about news with us. Latvian doctors left a man without medical assistance with a strike because he asked them in the Russian language. What is Russian diplomacy doing in order to record these facts? Are you going to highlight these incidents on international platforms? Well, what if this person addressed the medicals in a language of a South Asian state? What happened then? Often happens that a person cannot express his thoughts and only can try to explain something with the gestures or some sounds. Particularly in the context that we see it on the territory of a European state. It's unacceptable for a country that is just starting its history as an independent state. Even in that sense, it is inadmissible, unacceptable. And if we are talking of a country that is a member state of the United Nations, NATO, and the European Union, and delegates its representative into the ruling bodies of some European bodies, and it's terrible, it's a shame. When Latvian authorities speak about the level of democracy and global catastrophes, if they think that they have enough experience in order to pronounce their opinion, then I'll advise them to look at the situation one case of inhuman steps of one particular individual. It is a result, it's just of one fruit because it got enough. It is a consequence of the Russophobic policy pursued by the Latvian authorities. It is a neo-Nazi policy. Now the consequences have reached common patients. It is simply unsafe to speak Russian, and they demonstrate it. That's just common fascism. The MFA of Russia follows the situation around inhumane treatment of Latvian authorities of Russian compatriots and citizens in the context of language discrimination. We record information about mass violations of human rights and discrimination of our compatriots in Baltic states. We condemn barbarian activities of Latvian nationalists against the Russian citizens. We include such records in our annual report on violation of the rights of Russian citizens and compatriots abroad. A most recent report was published in December 2025. It was presented in the Russian MFA. The violations are also recorded in the joint report of MFAs from Russia and Belarus. Recently, such a report was published in June 2026. We also reflected in annual reports of the Russian neo-Nazism and other manifestations fueling modern forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. Given the systemic nature of discriminating steps of Latvian authorities and Latvian nationalists against Russian citizens and compatriots, we raise this issue at international platforms at the UN and OSCE. We demand a due reaction of human rights organizations. This case will be no exception. It won't be left without consequences. Russian MFA will continue taking steps in order to draw the attention of international community manifestation of neo-Nazism. Thank you so much. This was a musical festival in Latvia. People came from different countries. I wonder, when they spoke other language than Latvian, didn't they provide service, didn't they receive assistance at hotels, cafes, or somehow they were treated, they were accommodated in the hotels, they were sold water or food when they approached someone in a language other than Latvian? It is a hypocrisy. It's simple hypocrisy. But now it has a neo-Nazi nature. 80 years ago, neo-Nazism was on the rise in Latvia. Is Alma Yedin with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have one question. On the 9th of August, the Syrian MFA said it signed a memorandum of understanding, announced a signature of memorandum of understanding with Russia, which will be the new format of Russian presence and what will be the tasks of joint educational centers. We consider the signature of memorandum of the 9th of August between Russia and Syria on the functioning of joint logistics and education training centers in Khmemim and Tartus as an important step aimed at enhancing bilateral cooperation in the military field and enhancing the legal framework for cooperation under the new conditions. We believe it will be based on the long-term experience of cooperation between our countries. A possible example is restoration of direct flights between Moscow and Damascus. The first flight took place on the 16th of August. Regular flights will be administered on Sundays. Thank you. Is Apostolskая жизнь and Madam Zakharova. We have one question. For many years, Serbia has been considered one of the closest partners of Russia in Europe. But after the visit of Zelensky to Belgrade and statements by President of Serbia, Vučić, about the territorial integrity of Ukraine and its way towards the EU, doesn't Moscow ask itself, is Belgrade still a partner? Wait. I see the lack of logic in your question. One cannot approximate Kiev. With Kiev, you can only sink to the bottom. The silence by the Serbian leader Vučić in response to the Russophobic rhetoric at the press conference about the extermination of the Russian people. Well, I'm sure he found attitude of the Serbian people to such provocations.
As to Zelensky's visit, I have talked quite enough about it today. Is Zvestia with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have one question today. Did the Russian MFA receive the response from the US and Turkey about the possible transfer of the US armaments to Ukraine through the Turkish territory? We indeed saw such an information in the media. It cites the documents published by the US Congress about plans to transfer a large a number of armaments and munitions to the Ukraine that right now are in the Turkish army. The Russian MFA requested the US and Turkey for clarification. Expect to receive it soon. Is Golos Atechestvo with us? Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. We have one question. Finland supplied Ukraine with do they do this within the international law, or will there be any repercussions from Russia? Helsinki has supplied the Kiev regime with aid worth more than 4.7 billion euros. Majority of it, about 3.4 billion euros, goes for armaments and munitions. Their goal is to inflict as much damage to the battlefield to Russia as possible. And the Helsinki say that they want to ensure Kiev with strong positions in negotiations around the Ukrainian crisis. This aggressive policy has nothing to do with the international law. It has they act obliviously in terms of history. Finland, just like other Western states, violate their obligations as neutral sides under the Convention on Rights and Obligations of Neutral Powers, and in case of an armed conflict of 1907. As a result, it cannot be respected by Russia as it could have been if it were neutral in this conflict. By providing a large-scale assistance to Kiev, Helsinki is one step from becoming of this conflict. No hostile step of Helsinki won't go unresponded. Russia will consistently work to achieve all the goals set by our government. Are there any more questions? If no, then I would like to say goodbye to you. See you next time. I wish you